Ptolemy XI Alexander II. Ptolemy XI Alexander II was a short-lived king of Egypt from the Ptolemaic dynasty who reigned for less than 3 weeks in 80 BC. He was the son of Ptolemy X, Alexander I, and Cleopatra Selene. When his uncle, Ptolemy IX, died in 81 or 80 BC, his daughter, Berenice III, inherited the throne. For a time, she ruled alone and gained wide popularity. Rome, under the dictator Sulla, then intervened in Egyptian affairs. Ptolemy XI, living in Rome, was sent to Alexandria as a pro-Roman ruler, supported by the claim that his father's will left him the throne. As part of this arrangement, he was compelled to marry Berenice III, who was his stepmother, cousin, and possibly half-sister. 19 days after the marriage, Ptolemy XI had Berenice killed. Since she was beloved by the people of Alexandria, this act sparked immediate outrage. Enraged citizens rioted, seized Ptolemy XI, and lynched him in the streets. His reign, among the shortest in Egyptian history, ended in less than a month. Julius Caesar. By early 44 BC, Julius Caesar's power in Rome was at its height. He had been named Dictator Perpetuo, dictator for life, a move that confirmed to many Romans that he had no intention of restoring the Republic. His growing authority alarmed senators and citizens alike. When 2 tribunes tried to stop a crowd from hailing him as Rex, king, Caesar had them removed from office, angering the public who saw tribunes as protectors of liberty. Behind the scenes, opposition hardened. A conspiracy was forming. It eventually included more than 60 senators, among them former allies. The conspirators chose March 15, 44 BC, the Ides of March, for their strike during a Senate meeting at the Theatre of Pompey. Caesar had been warned of danger, but refused a bodyguard and attended as planned. Surrounded at the foot of Pompey's statue, he was attacked by the group. He was stabbed at least 23 times and killed instantly. Caesar's assassination ended his dictatorship, but plunged Rome into a new civil war. Far from restoring the Republic, his death cleared the way for the rise of his heir Octavian, later Augustus, and the transformation of Rome into an empire. Canute IV. Canute IV, later called Canute the Holy, was king of Denmark from 1080 until 1086. A devout supporter of the Catholic Church, he strengthened its power with large donations of land, enforced tithes, and supported the building of churches, including Lund Cathedral. In return, the church reinforced his royal authority. As king, Canute tried to expand royal power at the expense of the nobility and peasantry. He claimed rights over common land, shipwrecks, and the property of foreigners and those without heirs. He also imposed strict laws and demanded that peasants provide military service, transportation, and fines. These measures angered many subjects who felt the king was overreaching. Ambitious abroad as well, Canute considered the English throne his by right, as a descendant of Canute the Great. In 1085, he gathered a fleet to invade England with support from Flanders and Norway. But the campaign never launched. Disputes at home and the threat of attack from the Holy Roman Emperor forced him to delay. When his peasant army dispersed to return to their harvests, tensions only grew. In 1086, rebellion broke out in northern Jutland. Canute fled to Odense and took refuge with followers in St. Albans Priory. On July 10th, rebels stormed the church and killed Canute, along with his brother Benedict and 17 companions. Canute became the first Danish king to be canonized, recognized as a martyr by the Catholic Church in 1101, and later named patron saint of Denmark. Andronikos I Komnenos. Andronikos I Komnenos was Byzantine emperor from 1183 to 1185, and the last ruler of the Komnenos dynasty. A nephew of John II and cousin of Manuel I, his early career was marked by failed campaigns, conspiracies, and scandals that damaged his reputation long before he gained power. After the death of Manuel I in 1180, a struggle broke out over the throne of the young Alexios II. Andronikos marched on Constantinople in 1182, claiming to act as Alexios's protector. He quickly seized power, eliminated rivals, and by 1183 had himself crowned co-emperor. Alexios II was soon executed, leaving Andronikos the sole ruler. As emperor, Andronikos targeted the Byzantine aristocracy with harsh purges and violent punishments, creating a reign of fear. Although some of his reforms aimed at reducing corruption and limiting noble power were welcomed by ordinary people, his cruelty and instability alienated much of the empire. His rule also saw massacres and brutal suppression of dissent, which further undermined his legitimacy. In 1185, William II of Sicily invaded and captured Thessaloniki. The loss of the city turned public opinion in Constantinople against Andronikos. When Isaac Angelus led a revolt, Andronikos tried to flee but was captured. He was handed over to the people of Constantinople and subjected to a violent public death on September 12, 1185. Charles I. Charles I was King of England, Scotland, and Ireland from 1625 until his execution in 1649. The second son of James VI of Scotland, he became heir in 1612 after the death of his elder brother. 2 years after becoming king, he married Henrietta Maria of France, a Catholic princess, which added to suspicions about his religious sympathies. Charles believed strongly in the divine right of kings and often clashed with Parliament, especially over taxation and royal authority. His religious policies, favouring high Anglican practices, alienated Puritans in England and Covenanters in Scotland. His attempt to impose reforms on the Scottish Church triggered the Bishops' Wars, undermining his position and strengthening his opponents. In 1642, disputes over power and religion erupted into the English Civil War. Charles's forces, the Royalists, were defeated by Parliament's new model army. He surrendered in 1646, but his refusal to compromise led to renewed conflict. Captured again after escape and failed negotiations, he was put on trial by Parliament. In January 1649, Charles was convicted of high treason and executed by beheading. King Charles I would go down in history as the only English king ever executed. His death marked the abolition of the monarchy and the rise of the Commonwealth, though the crown was restored in 1660 under his son Charles II. Nicholas II. Nicholas II was the last emperor of Russia, ruling from 1894 until 1917. His reign faced growing unrest after defeat in the Russo-Japanese War, the Revolution of 1905, and his resistance to major political reforms. During World War I, heavy military losses, food shortages, and economic hardship caused his popularity to collapse. In 1917, mass protests and the February Revolution forced Nicholas to give up the throne, ending more than 300 years of Romanov rule. Nicholas and his family were imprisoned, and after the Bolsheviks seized power, they were moved to Yekaterinburg. As anti-Bolshevik forces approached the city in July 1918, officials feared the Romanovs could be rescued and used to restore the monarchy. On July 17th, Nicholas, his wife Alexandra, their 5 children and 4 servants were taken to a basement and executed by an armed squad. Their bodies were secretly buried outside the city. The Bolsheviks initially hid the deaths of the family, fueling decades of rumors that some of the children had survived. Their remains were eventually discovered and identified through DNA testing. Petronius Maximus. Petronius Maximus was Western Roman Emperor for just 75 days in 455. He was a wealthy senator with a long career in high office, holding posts such as Praetorian Prefect, Consul, and Patrician. He played a central role in the downfall of both Flavius Aetius, Rome's leading general, and Emperor Valentinian III. After Valentinian's assassination in March 455, Maximus secured the throne through the support of the Senate and bribery of palace officials. To strengthen his position, he forced Valentinian's widow, Licinia Eudoxia, to marry him and married her daughter Eudocia to his son, breaking her earlier betrothal to the son of the Vandal king, Gaiseric. This political maneuver angered both Licinius and Gaiseric, giving the Vandals an excuse to launch an invasion of Italy. Maximus proved unable to defend Rome. He failed to gain support from the Visigoths and panicked when news came that a Vandal fleet was approaching. As the people of Rome fled in chaos, he attempted to escape the city, but was abandoned by his guards. On May 31st, 455, he was killed by Romans in the streets. Accounts differ whether by a mob or by a soldier. His body was thrown into the Tiber, and soon after, the Vandals entered Rome and sacked the city. Louis XVI. Louis XVI was the last king of France before the fall of the Bourbon monarchy during the French Revolution. He came to the throne in 1774 at a time when France was heavily in debt, partly from its involvement in the 7 Years' War and from supporting the American Revolution. Economic problems worsened through the 1780s, with food shortages, rising bread prices, and growing unrest among the people. In 1789, the Estates General was called to address the crisis, but disputes between the king and the representatives of the Third Estate, commoners, led to the outbreak of the French Revolution. The National Assembly declared itself the new authority, and over the next years France was torn apart by political upheaval and violence. In 1791, Louis attempted to flee Paris with his family, but was caught at Varennes, deepening suspicion and hostility toward the monarchy. In August 1792, revolutionary forces stormed the Tuileries Palace, and Louis was arrested. Soon after, the monarchy was abolished and replaced by the French Republic. Louis was placed on trial before the National Convention, accused of conspiring against the state. He was found guilty of high treason. On January 21, 1793, his life was brought to an end by the guillotine in Paris.